Sure. Thank you. Okay. So, like you said, Managed Data is a new application for the Bureau, similar to it'll be very similar to the product that New York outlined and rolled out back in early December. Similar to that product, there is a membership area that controls access to the Managed Data product. That is centralized security, and when you first want to access it for the member services, you'll log in. I'll be logging in as the demo user. I'm presented with the applications and products that I have access to. By clicking the Managed Data link, I'm taken to Managed Data after just a couple seconds. And this is where everything will go down. So again, similar to the New York product, Managed Data has an extremely similar look and feel. There are, at first, you'll be taken to the dashboard, and there are multiple pieces of Managed Data, and really it's 4 pieces. The dashboard, the Employer Chronicle, policy systems, and then the unit statistical system. And we'll go through each of those in succession. The dashboard is, like I said, it's your landing page. As soon as you log in and access Managed Data, that's what you'll see. It's very easy to navigate through Managed Data. There are links at the top of every page to take you back to, say, the dashboard, the policy system, the unit system, to log out, and obviously there will be help icons within the Managed Data system. And these are contextual pages. So at any point in time, if you're on inside of policy, the help icon for that page will take you to videos that the Bureau will be creating and rolling out for assistance with Managed Data for that piece of system. So if I'm on policy, I'll see videos related to policy. If I'm on the dashboard, I'll see videos related to the dashboard, so on and so forth. The dashboard itself is made up of widgets. Right now, there's 11 in total. We've designed the system so that as further features are developed, more and more widgets will be added to the dashboard. And those widgets range from a simple search widget to notifications, all the way to some analytics that we believe will be insightful for you as carrier members. And so I wanted to go through those, starting at the top and just working down. At the top is the search widget. The search widget is a way for me to do common searches for Managed Data. All I have to do is give a policy number and choose to either navigate to the Employer Chronicle, the unit stat, or the policy system. And we'll get to that later. The notifications widget on the right is a way for the Bureau to send you notifications about the system. These could be welcome messages, like we see today. They could be system maintenance notifications, rating information, certain things that the Bureau feels that is necessary to report to you for Managed Data itself. Each of those messages will be tied back to a specific person that can be contacted for that specific message. By clicking email response, I'm actually taken to my email application, and it opens up with information about this notification, and you can respond right back to that, to the user that the Bureau has assigned. Moving down just a little bit, tracking by category. So this allows users to see what items are coming due and what the urgency is on them. By clicking each of the badges, you'll be able to quickly navigate to the different pieces of Managed Data that deal with that badge. So for instance, I can see here that in my unit stat tracking, I have 2 items that are due. If I were to click this badge, which we'll do later, I'm taken to those 2 items that are related to that badge. Very easy. And hovering over, I can see exactly what those badges are for. To the left is My List. And My List is what I would consider to be a key piece of how you'll do your work, especially when there's something that you need to follow up on at a later point in time. So MyList has the ability to favorite or flag different pieces of managed data, things like stored policies, things like individual policy tape transactions, stored and accepted units, and units that may or may not have been accepted by the Bureau, as well as unit stat tracking fields. From MyList, you can easily add or remove the items from your MyList, as well as navigate to the pieces that they are related to. For instance, if I wanted to navigate to this policy, I would just click the policy hyperlink. On the unit, again, I can click the policy number to go to the policy, or I can click the report correction to navigate to that specific unit. Moving down further, the contact information. So the Bureau will be assigning a dedicated user per carrier that knows and understands your statistical data. That person's contact information will be listed here in the contact information widget. On top of that, the policy person to contact will be Gina, and her information will be listed here as well. Under the contact information, there is what we call the WT-POLs and the WT-STAT widget. Through your daily work, you'll be able to take PT transactions or units that you're generating through managed data and add them to a queue to export later. This is really useful for if you need to extract that data to WT-POL or WT-STAT file format and use that in order to update your internal system with the corrections that you've been making through managed data. You can do that either one at a time by selecting and saying export selected, or you can export all of them and remove them from the queue. And at any point in time, you can add or remove via these buttons. And you can do that for both WT-POLs and WT-STAT. Then we get into the analytics. Currently, there are 5 analytic widgets for users to see how you're doing versus the industry. So on the left here, we've got the top 10 USR edit failures for my carrier versus the industry. And by hovering over the different pieces of the donut, I can see that edit, in this case, 588 has failed for me 22 times. And in the top left-hand corner, you can see what exactly that edit is. Similarly, you can see the same thing on the unit for the industry. So I can see that although I have failed at edit 588 the most, the industry itself is failing at edit 626 most. On the right, the same thing for policy edits, carrier versus industry. And at the bottom of both of these widgets are the ability to customize the data that you're seeing. If I only wanted to see edits that are perhaps blocking units from being accepted by the Bureau, I would uncheck the accepted with errors and warnings and just click apply. And then I can see that, oh, for me, I actually haven't had any failure or reject edits for units. Similarly, I can just adjust how far back I go. So right now, we start looking at the last 30 days, but we can look at the last 6 months and the last year as well. And again, the same exact thing on the policy side. Below those are my ratio analytics. I can see how often I have units or policies not being accepted by the Bureau compared to my industry. So for instance, I can see that my carrier on the unit side is doing very, very well compared to the industry. 4% of the industry's units are failing or rejecting, but for me, none of them are. And again, I can adjust those parameters at the bottom. On the policy side, though, I'm not doing as well. About 91% of my policy tape transactions are rejecting versus about 46 on the industry side. Then the last analytic is policy transaction timeliness. So this is a way for you to see exactly how late your PT transactions are coming in that are creating coverage for the Bureau or adding states via, say, a 15 transaction. I can hover over and see for the green that 4 of my transactions were on time, but 4 of them were 90 days late. Compare that to the industry where 79% of the transactions came in on time, but 18% were between 1 and 30 days late. And that'll give me a sense of how I'm doing compared to the industry. Those are the widgets. The other nice thing about the dashboard is that it allows you to customize the layout depending on how best you do your work. So you can click the bottom right-hand corner button to put the dashboard into an edit mode. At that point in time, I can actually change where each widget resides. So if I wanted to always see my list at the top, if I wanted to make it a little bit wider there, I can do that. If I then wanted my tracking by category under that, and then my search widget next to it, I can do that too. By clicking the green arrow, I can save that layout, or if I click the red X, everything goes back to where it was. And that's per user. So a user from Travelers can have a completely different layout for someone from, say, AIG. Next is the Employer Chronicle. So searching for a policy in my search widget, I could spell it correctly, and clicking the Employer button here, or I could just hit Enter, I'm taken to the Employer Chronicle. And Employer Chronicle is a way to look at the employer as a whole, from the combinable group level all the way down to the individual exposures and losses reported for those unit reports that are associated with it. So as you can see, like I said, we start at the combinable group level. I can see information that's related to, say, the rating. I can see when the last rating was. It looks like it was in September of 17. I can see that it was experience rated. I can see that it looks like there's a rating that's being held, and I can get information about why it's being held. So it looks like there's some units missing here. I can also see the most recent mod, as well as some information about the controlling coverage's name and address. We'll also show CPAP factors and TPAP factors easily for this, the most recent CPAP and TPAP factors for this combo group. If I needed to, for instance, look at the last 11 years of rating information and those mods, all I have to do is click the rating effective date, and I can see that information here. And this will help me if I'm needing to put in units from years ago, if the Bureau has so asked. Additionally, I can open up this address by clicking this, and I can see exactly where I am, where that owner is through Google Maps. So if I then wanted to go down to the coverage group level to that actual employer information, I would just expand by clicking the arrow on the left. Clicking the arrow on the left, I can see more specific information about the coverage group, the employer and insured itself. I can see where their primary location is. I can see when their last inspection was, and I can even see if they have any authorized classes for reporting. If I wanted to see what those authorized classes are, I would click this badge, and I can see right here what they are and where they came from. These, for instance, came from an inspection, and they were effective on 12/30/15. Again, drilling down further, the next layer is policy information. Policies are shown for every single, all of the coverages for this employer. So it looks like this employer has been covered for a long time, since 1989, and some of that information is redacted. The information that's redacted are for policies where my carrier that I'm associated with wasn't writing the policy for that information. However, I still need to know maybe that employer was covered during those times, and I can see that information here. Again, you can see that the policy number is linked, and I can click on that policy number here to navigate exactly to that stored policy. The icons on the right give me a lot of good information about adding and removing from my list. policies are able to be added, as we saw back on the dashboard. And I could either click the green button here. Green signifies that it's not in my list, and it's not in anybody else's my list. A yellow signifies that it's not in my list, but it is in somebody else's my list, and by hovering over, I can see exactly whose my list it's in. And that allows me to know if maybe there is some overlap between us doing our work. So if I need to go and talk to this alpha user, for instance, I can say, why is it that you're watching this policy when I should be doing my work? And red here signifies that it's in my list. And by clicking this, I can just remove it. If I wanted to see the units for a given policy, I can see here that there's an arrow against this policy, so I could expand that and see the actual units that have been accepted by the Bureau. And just some high-level information about them, when they were accepted, what their report and correction levels are, and so on and so forth. Again, I can add and remove from my list very easily. But now I actually want to see what, say, the exposures and the losses, the claims were on that unit. All I have to do again is just click. And I can see here all of the exposures that were reported for this unit. If I don't know what certain values mean, for instance, these double zeros here, all I have to do is click the magnifying glass, and I'm able to see what the code means and what the description is. And that's for both exposures and, say, losses. Just clicking the magnifying glass again, hide it. So, that's my list. And like I said, it's a very easy way to see the employer and the group as a whole and get some good information about them via just a policy number search with optional effective date search. So now I want to move over into the actual policy system. This is where we'll get a little bit more into the reporting side. So from the dashboard itself, there's a lot of ways to access both the sort of policies and the policy transactions. The first, like I said, was from my list. For my list, I could click the policy number and be taken to the stored policy itself. For me, though, I want to do an actual search, so I'm going to type my policy that I want to do some work with and click the policy button. What this does is it does a stored policy search. It searches for all of the policies that are stored in the system, and it will display those to me. Now, if I wanted to see, for instance, the policy tape transactions and their statuses, all I would have to do is click this search type and just redo my search. Now I can see all of the transactions that have been sent in for the policy. By clicking the policy number here, I'll be navigated to the stored policy. By clicking the transaction code, I'll be navigated to the actual PT transaction that was sent via PDX or through managed data. The submission ID is also linked. And what the submission ID will do is if I were to click that, it would display transmittal letter information if that tape file submission came from, say, PDX or DirectFTP. So going back to my original policy search, I'm going to go and search here. And I'm actually going to view that policy now. So now I want to look at the stored policy. The stored policy screen is divided up into a logical way, and I can easily navigate to any section of the policy. I can see header information about who the producer was, whether or not it's a wrap-up, the type of coverage here. If I wanted to go down to, say, the periods, I would just click the policy periods and be shortcutted down into the periods themselves. Similar for the names and the addresses. If I wanted to go down to the endorsements, I can see the endorsements, and if I wanted to see the detail information about those, all I would do is click the detail here, and it will bring it up. Additionally, I can see the transaction history information that's been sent in for this policy, as well as any correspondence letters that have been sent. So now if I do need to make some sort of correction to the policy, I can actually create a PT transaction for it. Go back up to the screen, to the top of the screen, and I will create a new transaction for the policy. It gives me a list of different transaction codes that I can create from this stored policy. For me, I want to create a miscellaneous change. When I click Create, Manage Data will take all of the information from that stored policy and repopulate it into my page. First, I need to set my issue date. That's always required as link data for the PT transaction. I'm going to make that to be 3/19, for instance. So something that I wanted to change was to make the producer name not Aaron Marcus, but Aaron Marcus new name. So all I have to do is type that in there. Looking through some more, I can go down to my insured names, and I can either say add a name, type some information in here, hit cancel, do the same thing for addresses, give information about the types of address, the address structure, whether or not it's a foreign address. Same thing for premiums. Exposures and class codes. I can add an exposure or I can edit an existing one. And endorsements. So one thing that I want to do is I actually want to modify this endorsement. And I want to change workers' compensation law. That's actually incorrect. I need to modify that to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is the best work comp data reporting excerpts here. And I'll just save. That information is stored to the policy. Additionally, what I want to do is add 2 endorsements that I originally missed. So I will put in my endorsement effective date of 1/1/2014. That's when my policy is effective. And check the endorsement numbers for the 290303 and 290304A. And I'll say add endorsements. So here's where I actually will insert my detail information. Name 1, address 1. I'll click the Save and Next, and that'll just take me to the next detail that I need to enter. Name 2, address 2. And I'll save and close. Now those endorsements have been added to my list, and I can see them here. At this point in time, I'm ready to actually save it. So I'll click Save and hit OK. So now my PT transaction is actually stored, but it actually still hasn't been submitted. Now I need to make sure and invalidate it. So what I'll do is I'll actually run a test validate against this PT transaction. And at this point in time, what's happening is the same validations that the Bureau would be running against your transaction, if it was sent through, say, CDX or direct upload, are being run now against the policy. And we'll just have to be patient for a minute. As it warms up, it will come. But what we'll see here at the end is a list of the actual edits that have failed the transaction. Just be patient. It's working. It is working. Normally the first time I do it, it's a little slow. while that's running in the background, I'll actually go back to another policy that this actually occurred for. So if I look at a previous transaction that I've actually inserted and created, what I would see is an edit run that would show up, and it would show me the edits that failed for this transaction. There it is. So here's what I would see. These are the actual errors that would have occurred for this PT transaction. And I can decide whether or not I'm going to fix them or not. If I do decide to fix them, I would close, take my transaction back into an edit mode, and go make those fixes. But in this case, I'm okay with the edits that fired. I can go back down to the edit runs and see what they were if I needed to remind myself. But I want to actually submit this to the Bureau now. So I'll actually click Submit. It'll confirm with me that I do want to submit this data. Hit yes. Now I can see that it's actually been submitted. And at this point in time, in real time, you have submitted your data down to the Bureau. This is accepted in the Bureau system and will be reflected in the policy that we'll go back and see in the stored policy. So I'll actually do that now. A nice feature of this is I can add it to my WC policy queue if I wanted to add it to my queue to export later. But I don't want to do that now, so I'll just click OK. So now if I go back to the dashboard and reload my stored policy, I can see that my changes were accepted. Here's the update that I made, as well as the endorsement that I added. All online, no waiting. Some additional features of the actual policy and transaction screens is that if I needed a PDF version of this policy to put into my system, say I have an imaging system or I need some proof of this policy and what's on it, I could either click from the stored policy, I can click print. And what that will do is it will actually generate a PDF version of the policy for me. All of the information here, including the endorsements, all of the exposures, the names, everything. If I need it for the actual transaction, well, I can do that too. I'd actually go to my transaction, find the one that I did, that's this one today, and then I'd hit print for this one. Similar report, but just this transaction's information. And that's important because the stored policy may have cancellations, it may have reinstatements, things like that, that I can choose what I'm actually printing and generating here. Additionally, I can add this policy to my list from the My List button. I can add it to my WC policy queue or export it to a WC policy format. If I were to do that, I actually have my WC policy file right there, just for this transaction. But if I add it to my queue, I can go back to my dashboard and see that it was added right here. Now, if I want to export all of them, I could select them all, export selected, and here's my WC policy file with all of those transactions on them. Just a couple features left of the policy system. Going back to the search, if I wanted to do some more general searches in the policy side, say by, for transactions, for instance, I need to find everything that was received between a certain date. I can actually do that. So I can say, I want to see everything that was received by the Bureau in the last 7 days. And I can do that search. And after just a couple seconds, it comes up. These are all my PT transactions that I've generated and received both from CDX, direct upload, and managed data right here. If I wanted to figure out ones that have certain statuses, so I wanted to find all of the rejecteds, I could do that too. I don't have any. That's great. And we can do the same thing on the policy side. If I were to research for my demo policy, I can either add an effective date or search for specific statuses. If I were to change this to canceled and search, obviously that policy that I have is not canceled, so it doesn't show up. But it is active. Again, add and remove from my list here, and navigate to the policy. The last piece of policy is correspondence search. We easily look for correspondences that have been sent that are tied to policies. The Bureau has decided which policy letters are going to be output into managed data, and as they're generated through the day, I can actually go and view them. If I wanted to see everything that was generated and issued in, say, the last 7 days, I can actually do that search. And I can see that there's been one correspondence issued in the last 7 days for this policy. If I wanted to view it, I can do that too. If I needed to create a policy transaction from scratch, there's a couple options here by saying create new policy transaction from the menu, and I can either create a new policy in 01, an 02, or a 15. Most likely, renewals, assuming that they're still under your same carrier, will be generated from the prior year policy. So that's policy. Next, we're actually going to go over to the USR side. So similar to policy, I can actually do the same search for units. And I can do that either by going to my units in my list and clicking report correction. Because unit status in my tracking by category, I could search for all my failed and rejected. That doesn't make sense in my case because I have none as per this badge. Or I could use my search widget, or I could navigate via the menu items. I actually like the search widget, so I'm going to do that. Same one here, and click Unit Stat. At this point in time, I can see all of the different unit reports for that policy number. I can narrow them down by status, so everything that's been received, everything that's in an accepted state for the Bureau, maybe everything that's failed, or something that I haven't submitted yet. And again, I can add and remove from my list here. If I wanted to view some error reports and figure out what these units have, what they've failed, I have a couple of different ways to do that. First is by selecting the 2 rows with errors here and saying View Print Error Report. At that point, Managed Data will run a report that shows what the actual errors are. So I can use that to work from if I want to. I can export those to WC Stat as well, very easily. Get my WC Stat file. I can do different searches similar to policy. Receive date range, say everything in the last 30 days. Do that search. So I can see that there's been about 7 in the last 30 days. And if I wanted to narrow those down to, say, just report ones, I can do that too. If I wanted to look at, say, the current view of the unit, and that may be a new term for some people, but the current view is the culmination of, within a report, all of the corrections together. I would do a current view search for my policy and hit search. At that point in time, I could click this 01 and be shown the current view of the unit, and that would be all of my corrections together, all of my header corrections, loss corrections, exposure corrections, so on and so forth. but I don't want to do that. I actually want to go and view a unit. I'm actually just going to show the way that this 1.0 looks. This is the original correction, correction 0. So similar to the policy side, it's laid out the same way. On the left, I have badges that show me whether or not there's data. So I can see easily that there's no loss information. There is exposure data, though, that I can easily navigate to. I can see all of the different validation runs for this unit, so I can see that there's been a lot of test validations for it, and I can see what the last one showed. And this matches up with the error report that I would run, because this is accepted with errors. I can click error report. See that same error report from Manage Data. Again, I can remove it from my WC Stat queue or add it back, export it to WC Stat, add it to my list. I can print the unit. It's a nice unit report. But really what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making corrections to this. So I need to correct some data on here. One thing that I don't like is that the error shows that it's missing a class code, 9740. So I'm actually going to create that correction now. So I'll actually choose to take the exposure record correction and click OK. So Manage Data will disable any fields that aren't supposed to be reported for exposure corrections. This is helping make sure that you guys get your data in correctly. Actually go in and expand the splits, and I'm going to add an exposure. This is going to be a non-standard, so revised data on 114, no mod. See that it's a state actor federal act. Class is 9740. Exposure 0. Manual rate is 0. And the premium is $21. I click Save. Add it to my exposures here. I have to update my totals, so I'm going to do that really quick. And because this is an exposure correction, I can't add or change any loss information. That's right. Save it. Hit OK. So now I can test validate it again. I want to make sure that this is going to be accepted by the Bureau. So I'll test validate it. No error sign. That's great. Perfect. Now I actually want to get it to the Bureau. What I'll do is I'll submit it. We actually run validations one more time just to make sure that it'll pass validations. So if you change anything, we just want to make sure of that. Since there are no errors, you can submit it. And you'll be able to submit it with errors as well, but we want to make sure that you understand that there may or may not be errors there. So I'll submit the transaction. It's been accepted. That makes sense. There's no errors. It shouldn't be accepted with errors. It shouldn't be accepted with warnings. It should actually be accepted. Again, I get the WC Stat queue, the ability to add to it, and click OK. I can add it here. I can print this one. Same information. Here's my 9740 that I added. And if I go back to my unit search screen, I should be able to see it. There it is. At this point in time, the Bureau has this data, and I know that it is accepted. It's in their system in real time. If for some reason it went to failed and the Bureau needs to look at it, I could have added it to my list over here. could contact my person and say, hey, can you look at this unit for me? Maybe I'll go away, but if I go back to my list, I can actually see the transition for the unit. If the Bureau were to do something with it, I could watch that happen in real time. The status will be updated. I want to see the current view. Do a search. What I'll see here is my 2 exposures right here. And all the other information about the unit. The other big piece is going to be the unit stat tracking. So I'm actually going to do that from the dashboard itself because I like the badges. If I wanted to find all of my pre-delinquents, delinquents, or fines, I can actually click the fine badge and see which 2 units are missing that are going to be subject to fines. I could go to the policy here, but I would actually have to physically create this unit via the unit, create a unit transaction. And that would start my creation of the 1.0 here. The insured name here links actually over to the Employer Chronicle, and it will do a search on that policy so I can see any information that I might need for that unit. But if I wanted to change my search criteria to, say, the 14th month pre-delinquent list, I could do that as well. Similarly, if I wanted to find my failed and rejected units, I would click that badge. And ManageData does a search for me to figure out if I have any failed or rejected units. This will return nothing because the badge says so. And just to show, create a unit transaction. Here's where I would choose my carrier and add in my information. I add my exposures. I add my losses. And I update my totals. On both the policy and the unit screen, we've added tooltips to every single WCIO field that you guys would be inputting. By hovering over a field, you can see exactly what needs to be reported in each field. And that's on both the main screen and the detail screens too. At this point in time, I wanted to open it up to any questions. I'm not sure if we've gotten questions via this. Okay, perfect. Can you read them out?
Sure. So we had a question about clarifying the delete feature on a policy. Are you actually deleting a policy, or are you deleting a transaction?
Yeah, so right now, or actually, if you're viewing a stored policy, you're actually not able to make any changes to it. The delete feature, and I'll actually show that, is if the policy transaction, and in the same case for a unit transaction, if it has not been submitted to the Bureau. So in the policy tape world, that would be what I would call a loaded transaction. That's the terminology we use on the policy side. I can delete this policy tape transaction because it hasn't been submitted. I cannot delete the actual policy through ManageData. That actually requires Bureau intervention and would need to contact Gina about doing that. Okay. And the same thing on the unit side. On the unit side, if we have created a unit, I can't delete this unit because it's in an accepted state or it's in a submitted state. But if I were to create a correction to it and save, because it's in an unsubmitted status, I can actually delete that unit. It hasn't been submitted yet.
There's a circle with a line through it, too.
Oh, yes. The circle with the line.
Just to the right of the trash can.
This
Yeah.
is to cancel the editing. So you have save and then cancel the edits.
Also, I noticed, I put New Jersey page replacements. I don't see a replace button. I only saw create correction.
That would be if it's failed or
Only if it's failed.
Only if it's failed. We don't. Okay, got it. That's right.
Yeah.
So
And I think that was a question. Okay.
if say, the 2.0 is failed, it'll show up on, in your search history there,
Mm-hmm.
and then if I want to make a change on it.
You'd actually open it up,
Okay.
and you would see the failure there. I think I can get it.
And then you resubmit it as 2.0. So if the failed or rejected 2.0, it's there, it's just not accepted, and I can make adjustments to it on here.
Correct. Yeah, so let me see if I can do that really quick and show you. My totals are wrong. I believe that this will fail. Okay, so this has failed.
Okay.
I'm actually going to submit it. So like I said, it's going to rerun through those validations. I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm going to do it. That's fine. Submit it. And reject it. Now I can create my replacement.
Okay. So even if it's rejected, it still shows up on the system.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and so if I actually go back, I can actually see that. Right. There's the badge. In real time, click that. There's my rejected unit.
Oh, great.
And I can actually see the error report here. Right there. And if I open it up, I can see the error report and also the validations on it.
Will it tell you the correct values? What the correct premium should be and exposure and all that? The errors there?
We don't do that because it should be coming from you guys. If it's calculating it for you, then is it truly what you have?
In the beginning, it showed the employer chronicle and it showed the non-status, and if it wasn't promulgated due to a missing unit.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not, you're not the carrier of record for that piece that's missing, will it identify who the carrier is?
So you'll actually be able to go and, so because the information is redacted, that's a good question. And that's why we actually still show all of that information just redacted. At that point in time, what I would imagine you would do, and Madeline, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you would contact the Bureau and say, I need this rating, or I need my next rating, but this is being held. Can you please reach out to the carrier that's blocking it?
Right, but would we be able to identify who the carrier is? Because a lot of times we get inquiries on that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to reach out to you just for that inquiry. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I got a question. One with the delinquent list, what's expected to do, would this then be able to read exactly what is expected to do delinquent and be able to pull the subsequent for a unit?
So you're saying like if there's an open claim that hasn't been, if there's an open claim on, say, the first report and it's going to be due in the next year?
Yeah, would it actually be able to read that is due, and would it be able to select the policy and actually the unit would come in like it's a subsequent and possibly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would show the subsequence as well.
To piggyback off of that question, if you're creating a new unit, whether it's 1.0 or a subsequent, will it bring in any generic information through once you put the policy number, i.e. what that report level is, effective date, mod?
If you're creating a brand new 1.0, for instance,
Right.
no. But if you're creating a correction or a subsequent off of that existing unit, yes.
But it won't bring any policy level, header level detail even on 1.0?
No.
Could that be
not, it could be a wish list. It could be a wish list, absolutely.
For the corrections rejected report, can you have a replacement for the corrections also?
If it's failed or rejected, yeah. Mm-hmm. But if it's already accepted, say the one who is in an accepted state, you need to correct that data, you create a correction at the 1.1 level.
Okay. We are submitting to NCCI.
Okay.
Independent bill that New Jersey is rejecting a correction. Can I replace directly on this side?
Yes.
Without going to NCCI?
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Yes. Anything, even if it's come through, say, CDX or direct upload, will show in here. As soon as you know that it's rejected, once it gets into the Bureau system from CDX or NCCI, wherever it's coming from, once it's in the Bureau system, you'll be able to see it right here, and then do anything that you would any normal unit. We treat all unit and policy data the same, no matter where it's coming from.
So, for the Paul Rob was saying, for the experience, for the employer section where the experience pods are, was there a link to get the actual worksheet? Or are you just giving the actual?
Just give them mods.
You're just giving the mods, you're not giving the worksheets.
Correct.
Okay.
And that could, again, be a further enhancement.
Can they hear the questions, you think, well enough?
Well,
Maybe the practice, but internally, repeat the question in case anyone couldn't hear. Because we can all hear here, I'm not sure if that's good.
Yeah, I think there's mic too there.
yeah, because I think it'd be easier if you just click on the mod factor, boom, worksheet pops up, you're done.
Yeah, that's absolutely something that could be on the, like a wish list.
Okay. And the other thing was, in the unit side, when you did a correction, I know you had to update all the totals, but if you just create a loss correction, you're updating a claim, you're just changing the injury code, are you going to make them go back and update all the totals again, or are you going to bring the totals in so the users don't have to bring them back in as well? Because that should really be replicated. If you change an injury code, class code, that's not a total record. You should replicate the totals that were there. But if they make a dollar change, then you make them. I think we change totals.
I think we can make that change.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand what you're doing. That makes sense. Or can the totals be, even if you are doing an adjustment, if you're adding a class code to the payroll, you change it to payroll, can totals automatically populate and update? Well, that's what you were asking, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so that's where we would, and we'll I think, talk about it with the Bureau, we can discuss, but from a reporting perspective, I think the Bureau wants to make sure that you are reporting the data that you actually have. So it would be up to you to do that. But it could be something else that, with discussion with Madeline and the Bureau, we could think about putting that in there as well. That's a good question.
Yeah, the whole thing is always the other bureaus do the same thing. Is when you change a class code, you need to go back and update all the totals again.
Right.
When you shouldn't have to if you're not changing a dollar figure.
Correct.
You know?
That makes sense.
We're going to hold off questions in here, we're going to go out to
Okay.
Thank you.
So next question was on the dashboard, tracking by category. Will that reflect policy information as well?
Yes. So the Bureau is currently planning and evaluating adopting the same policy tracking and criticisms that the New York Bureau is using. So those will be similar. And at that point, once that is implemented, then the policy tracking will be added as well. Is that right, Gina? Yes. And so that, I think a memo will go out or something around that.
Great. The next question is, can we upload policy transactions like O1s or O2s directly to manage data?
At this point, no. We would consider that's something that CDX is extremely good at doing, is taking those files and shipping them where they need to go. But it could be done at some point in time.
Okay. The next question is, can we do replacement reports for failed or rejected units?
Yep, and I think we covered
Answered.
that. Mm-hmm.
Also, speaking of delete, can anyone delete a notification on the dashboard?
That's a good question. So these notifications are for my users. So if the Bureau were to send out a notification, they would send a notification to you, Ellie, and to Paul, and to Fred and Bob. If you were to log in and you were to read to open this notification and click delete, you would only be deleting it for you.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point in time, Fred and Paul and Bob's would all still stay even unread in their system,
Mm-hmm.
similar to how email works.
Yep. Great. The next question, is the exporting to WC Pulse a necessary step to add it to your queue and export it?
Absolutely not. That is something that is a feature that we thought would provide value with managed data in order for you to repopulate your internal system if needed. But if you're making the changes and those are already reflected in your internal system, or if your internal system can't accept a WC Stat or WC Pulse file to update, then there's no reason to do it. It's just a nicety feature.
Yep. All right, next question. How do we access the website, and do reps sign themselves up, or does the company need an admin to grant access?
Yes, we will have, when managed data goes live, we will have a link on our website at www.baker.com that will take you to managed data. It'll actually take you directly to our Central Security, and if you are signing up as an admin, you will have to go in and send in an application via fax. We'll create the user and send the information back to you, and then you can create the users for your carrier. Okay.
Next question, can you delete rejected or failed units and process replacements?
You cannot delete the rejected or failed units from managed data because they've already been submitted to the Bureau, but you can, if you created the replacement and you have not submitted it yet, you can delete that. But the replacement will replace the unit inside of the Bureau system and logically delete it once the replacement is submitted and accepted.
Right. All right, next question. If a transaction like NB, end date, et cetera, is added, what backup is needed to support what was input? New business. This is from Kimberly J. Smith. The transaction like new business endorsement, that's just the abbreviation, et cetera, is added, what backup is needed to support what was input?
I would think it would be the same backup that CDX would require if it was being added through CDX, right? It's like if you're creating a new policy through managed data, new business policy, I don't think the Bureau requires any proof, right?
No proof. They just have to fill out all of the necessary fields, and it should just be either accepted or rejected.
Mm-hmm. Right.
There's no additional criteria required.
Okay. Let's see here. There was another question surrounding the exporting the WC Pulse. Maybe it would just be, there's a few of those questions, maybe it would be worth just going through that again and how that feature works.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the widget, and I'll do this from the widget, through my work, I've been, say, through the day, creating policy transactions, creating units, and submitting them, updating them, and getting them accepted by the Bureau. But then wanted, for some reason, to download all of those transactions that I've created through the day. All I would do is I could select all of them via this button here at the top, the checkbox, or individual ones, and export them to a WC Pulse file. Same thing for WC Stat as well. Yes.
Can you do a batch submission then, or is it you have to submit each transaction you're doing?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the question that was asked earlier about like being able to upload said file. Right now, you cannot do that. That submission file, that batch file would be, say, uploaded either direct FTP or through CDX, and then once it's into the Bureau, then you can see the results.
So in some of the Bureau's current environments, you could go in and you're going to create a WC Pulse submission, or you're going to create a WC Stat submission.
Mm-hmm.
Their whole is a work in progress.
Right.
And you could select 10 different policies.
Right.
And submit them all up as one.
There's no reason to do that anymore.
But
at this point in time, you can
individual. Okay.
Exactly, because of how tightly integrated into the Bureau system this is, you can do one by one. You don't have to actually select all 10 and submit them.
You can select all 10.
You have to. Yeah, and it doesn't really make sense because it's not a batch file. They're individual policy transactions and individual units themselves.
You're sort of
Yeah.
the differentiation between old and new.
Yep.
If we submit any corrections on unit set, does it tell you edit, pop-up edit, if there is anything wrong before we submit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the unit side, the way that the Bureau's gone is, on the unit side, we will revalidate the unit. We'll run those test validations against the unit before you submit. And so it'll show it. And that was, I can actually show you that one more time. There. So for instance, I'm just going to create this correction here and hit OK. So I could either test validate it if I really wanted to, see. But when I hit submit, on the unit side, when I hit submit, it actually runs the validations for me. And I can see that. There are validations that would fail. So in this case, if I were to continue and actually submit that to the Bureau, it will reject.
And I can resubmit again if it is rejected there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's not rejected yet because I haven't submitted it.
No, but if I submit it,
Mm-hmm.
it's an error,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's a rejection, you know what I mean? It will come tomorrow or same day I can see the rejection.
You'll see it right then and there.
So I can resubmit again then.
Yep, absolutely. Yes. So for instance, if I go back to that unit that I had failed, this rejected unit is rejected. I can see it right then and there. Then if I wanted to create the replacement for it, I'd click Create Replacement. I would then choose the correction type because the correction type might have been wrong, for instance. I would choose that, and then I would do everything all over again. I would save it, hit OK, test validate it, resubmit it. If that goes to rejected, that one goes to rejected, I do it again. But the nice thing is that before you submit it, you should know that it's not going to be accepted. So from a managed data perspective, unless there's some reason you need to submit the unit, it really shouldn't get to that point, right?
Will this have our past data, or is it going to be point forward?
All data that the Bureau has will be available through managed data. Through however far back we migrate. How far back do we migrate? The 80s? For staff, 2003. Yeah, so for staff, 2000, back to 2003.
How far back are you validating errors on that data?
Yeah, because we've been getting, even when all the new SARs that are developed, we've been getting errors back from 2002 that were never fixed, and now they're popping on our system. So is that going to happen here in New Jersey, or we don't know that yet?
How do you mean?
Are you going to sign in one day and have 50,000 errors from?
Yeah.
Open prints and edits and failures.
Yeah.
That's probably New Jersey question.
Just because we are similar to New York, we have recently won 700 errors since 2000, whatever, 2002 or whatever. Okay. And when we call the Bureau, and Bureau says that, okay, you just send us just a flat email that report as correct as reported, and we'll take care of it. But question is, when you have new edits, you should tell us in advance, and there is always coming dates. Never go back to the old data, otherwise it's going to be a nightmare for us as a data provider.
So they bring your
So you always have a future. Any edits, when you think about any edits, even, if you think that you want to look something data, relational data, it should be in future days. You cannot go back, or you cannot run back and just ask us to fix those. This is going to be
You're talking about that validation that was created, brand new validations, right? And they're effective at a certain date. They will not be backdated. You're not going to use that same validation for something that was submitted 2 years prior. It's validation going forward.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what we're looking for.
That's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
You're not doing a net edit. You're not going to do a net editing.
No.
I don't think we've ever done that before. No. Whenever we've done, when we've added brand new edits, whether it was in our prior system or this new one, they carry on an effective date. So
says they're effective, that's whatever data is coming in is what was flagged as for validation, right? Anything prior to that is not eligible to that. It's not going to work.
Yeah, they're not on old data.
Right, it would be on the new transaction.
On the
Yeah.
transaction.
The new transaction.
You're talking old data that's already been
But my question is, when you say the new transactions, but we should go by the policy effective date rather than having a new transaction, because subsequent reports may impact any relation or any new edits. Like if I'm submitting any subsequent reports, there is something in the losses we are adding. So you say going forward.
So you're dealing with, like, in the case, I think it was the LAA, we didn't have that for, right, we had an effective date for that, right? So if we were going back date, right, we're not looking at subsequent data that would, you're submitting an additional unit card, right, subsequent data, so we're not validating for that subsequent data, those subsequent reports, right? We're only looking at stuff that is falling within the effective date of that other new unit coming in that will have that data on there. Yeah.
Can you just go back to what the policy history is? I hear that 1980 was, units is 2003.
Mm-hmm.
What did you say was going to be the policy history on this?
Back to the 80s.
88?
Yeah, so for instance, if I look at my test policy here, and go back to the Employer Chronicle.
1988 is probably the first full policy. We do have select 1987 policy data out there, but pretty much 88.
Yeah, I can see coverage for this employer all the way back to 89. And if I was that carrier, I would actually be able to go and view that policy.
It depends what carrier it was when they came on board, when we went with our new system back in the 80s. Yep. Whether you submitted data to us, then we would have it. Perfect, thank you.
You may take this and we want, maybe we'll.
One more here and then we'll.
Yeah.
For correspondence, on this, will it only have system-generated items, or will there be any manually generated letters? Are they going to be housed there as well, like say the ownership information?
So the letters that we show are actually listed here, and you can see exactly which ones they're going to show. So the Bureau has, these are all of the different ones that will be shown. So I believe that there is an ownership one. Did we put ownership ones?
It should be, I think it's an 80.
That's the last one. Here's a non-compliant ownership. I don't think we showed the ownership. Did we?
When you say the ownership, meaning the determination by the Bureau relative to an ownership?
No, the European liability or we'll talk about it. We'll look at it. Yeah, we'll look at that.
So should everything be here online, or will there
Not everything.
Not everything.
Okay.
There are certain correspondences, for example, a duplicate coverage correspondence. That's something that gets directed to the employer. So the carrier would not get that letter. There are some specific. No, not if it's two different carriers. The carrier doesn't get that. The employer gets notified, so the employer can tell us which carrier he's accepted for that policy period. And there are some specific drafted letters, certain correspondences that you won't see there. By and large, these are the routine correspondences that are addressed to the industry because there's a premium element, there could be any type of element on the policy that requires correction, information concerning the plan risk, depopulation, et cetera, et cetera. The majority, by far, I think, is 80% of the correspondence will be viewable and trackable through managed data.
So then just to piggyback off that, if there is something we feel is correct, carrier feels is correct, we need to submit support documentation. That might have been what that question was leading to. Still have to go through the old snail mail, email, fax, or whatever, or will be a
Perspective, as of now, you should continue in that method. If you have a special situation, I would say contact the manager involved because, we do make exceptions depending on the information that we're looking for. And everything's an evolution.
Thank you.
We'll get.
Quick question to piggyback on what you were saying. Sometimes we get letters asking, why there's so few policies, considering the premium. That's not actually a reject or any kind of edit. Would those be in here, or would you still get those by mail and have to respond by mail?
Those are going to be from the experience rating department. We have $1 million, we have $10 million, exposure, but there's no losses, they come from the experience rating department, where those.
So the letters that we show here are actually the letters written against the policy itself.
Right.
So those letters would not be viewable at this time for it. You want to go back to the?
Yeah, we'll do another question. Is there a way to submit a first report without retyping all of the policy information?
So that, I think Rob had that question earlier, and so that would be, at this point in time, no, but it could be that we could, say, create a unit from a policy or something like that. That's definitely a feature that we could add in the future.
Yeah. Next question is, how do they get user IDs?
Again, as far as the user ID is concerned, when this goes live, we will have a page for managed data that will have a PDF attached to it. You can download the PDF, fill in the information pertaining to the admin for the carrier. That admin, we will create a user for them, and then submit the user ID and password to the admin. The admin then can come in and follow a link and be able to go and create all the users for their carrier and give them particular roles, whether it's read-only for stack or policy, or rewrite for both policy and stack. Okay?
Do you know what date you're looking to put that out?
We're literally early, just in the coming weeks.
Next question is, why redact the information? You can, I think, redact the information on the Employer Chronicle when you can find it using the coverage search.
You can't actually find that information using the coverage search, though. If I were to go back to my test policy search, and go down into here, into the policies, I actually, even if I happen to know this policy number for some way,
I think they're referring to the Bureau policy coverage,
their coverage search, not
on the website.
There's a local coverage search, you can see which
so that's
I believe that's the reference.
I think that's something that we can discuss about unredacting or something. Well, we can discuss that afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next question. When adding a class code, how do you know what the class category is?
Good question. Business rule, right?
Yeah.
You want to put on this now?
Well, it's a business rule, you have your manual classes, which are subject to mod. Then you have your statistical classes that are subject to mod. And then you have your non-standard, which are not subject to mod.
Right. Subjects, not subjects, and non-standard, right?
Correct.
And you should know that the user should know which one that is.
Business rule, yes. Okay.
Is that available through anything that the Bureau provides, like class code lookup or anything like that?
The best place to look is at the algorithm that's in the Bureau manual, where it breaks out and has every individual class listed and where it should be reported.
Okay. So if you choose the wrong one, you should get, you validate it, it should kick back.
It should, yeah.
I think this one was already answered. If an original policy transaction is rejected, will that transaction be editable in managed data, or would that need to be corrected and resubmitted via CDX or whatever method?
So it cannot be editable in managed data the way from the rejected side. However, what you could do is from the 15, you could create a transaction from it, and then it would take all that information from the 15 and take the information, and so you could correct it right then and there. You don't actually have to go back to TDX in order to correct that data.
Right. I think this is also a duplicate. Will bond worksheets be available in the Employer Chronicle?
Yeah, that's a nice to have that we could add in the future.
Yep. The next question is about receiving mailed paper correspondences, and will they stop receiving the paper correspondences once we go live in April? No.
Not yet.
Right, they'll still be issued, but you would be able to also view those via managed data.
just like to touch point that anything that is submitted through managed data, they will not receive any kind of the reports. Today, you get daily error reports from the statistical area. Anything that's processed through managed data will not come through the mail.
We'll get notifications, when we receive notifications.
You have, right,
Every time we'll get email, links with it directly. We have to go in there and data check.
no, you look at your daily reports on any daily submissions that you're doing outside of managed data. But anything you submitted to managed data, you've got the reports there, you've got them, readily available.
So there's no reason to send it to you because you should have seen it online right then and there.
Put it on my list, keep track, you can write the corrections.
So anything CDX, we are still going to get those error reports in mail.
Yes.
Can we
Now,
tell you
you could come in here. Huh?
And what?
Can we tell you now? I mean, if it's online here, I mean, really,
Correct, yes.
I mean,
Yes, you can tell us no.
okay, I mean,
Yeah, so the way that you could view that is once it's into the bureau,
yeah.
you would see it here in the sales order desk.
Right.
It would show up.
I
And
mean,
you would see it.
you're right there now.
Exactly. And you can do it for a receive date range too. I could say, well, I want to see everything from yesterday.
Can you export this to Excel?
Yes.
Export.
So it will actually export this here. Right to Excel.
Okay, great.
All right, so we're going to continue with the questions that we have listed. Regarding arrears, can a cancellation or reinstatement be processed or reprocessed on the same day?
Yep.
Answer is correct, yep.
Reinstated and cancellation again.
Yep. On the fine and delinquent list, will this be in real time or still produced on the 15th of the month? Also, if we process the correction in response to the fine delinquent, will it come off the list that was produced?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So right now, in the Bureau system, the badges that we see in the unit stat tracking for delinquents is actually updated nightly. It'll be updated nightly via backup. However, the Bureau is working on an enhancement to their internal system where these numbers will have the ability to be updated in real time. So as soon as that unit correction comes in and is accepted, you'll see the number drop in real time. And that'll be coming most likely in 2018, if I had to guess. Yes, that'll be a 2018 enhancement to the system.
Next question, when submitting a unit correction, does it update automatically, the status?
Yes.
Does it update?
Yeah, as soon as you submit, you'll see the status change, and then the screen will refresh, and you'll see that it went to accept.
Another question, will there be a similar tool for test audit data coming soon?
Can they expand on that question?
Yeah, maybe that's when we'll have to
We might have to follow up with that.
follow up with that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that one we already answered. Another question, we receive a large number of crits where we need to verify data submitted on claims. Is there going to be a response area to respond to those types of criticisms?
I think that goes back to the question about sending in the snail mail.
Yep. Yep. I'm not entirely sure what that means.
WC Pulse is sending it back to the carrier. So the WC Pulse export is I am, at this point in time, I'm a carrier user. When I export for WC Pulse, yes, the carrier can use that information as they see fit.
Yes. Yes, and when you hit submit, that is sending it to the New Jersey Bureau.
That's right, and it is accepting it or rejecting it from their system in real time.
Yep.
There's no waiting anymore like there is, say, through CDX or through some of the other Bureau systems. It is, if you hit submit, you say yes, it is in or it is not. There's no question about it.
Right, so they should not be submitting any of those WC stat or WC files back to the Bureau.
Correct. No, there's no reason to because it's there already. That's good. That's a good point.
Yep. Next question, if the policy is updated to resolve a unit error, will the unit automatically be corrected or will an additional adjustment to the unit be needed?
So
So you have the incorrect experience mod on the unit, but you also have that on the policy. So if you correct one, will it forward?
You'll have to submit both corrections.
Yep. Could a USR rejection be corrected on CDX and resent, or does it need to be done through managed data?
It could be done on the CDX side, but CDX's validations are limited and they're not bureau specific for the most part. So you'd be, I think in my opinion, I would prefer that they were done through here because you'll see exactly which errors are going to happen immediately.
Okay. A few of these questions, let's see here, skip down. When is the system going live? We've stated that it'll probably be early April. And a lot of people have asked the question, evidently it's hard to hear some of the Q&A that's going on. So everything that we have listed here as far as questions and what we've documented, we will create a document stating all those questions and then the subsequent answers so that we can send out to the group and post. So everybody who wasn't able to hear all of the responses will have that in written form. We've gotten a lot of questions on that. Here. Looks like we have two more questions. One is New Jersey has unique requirements that a signed transmittal letter is signed and sent to support policy file transmittals. If users are submitting directly online, how does this impact the signed transmittal letter requirements outside of CDX or carrier batch upload process?
That's done automatically. When they enter a cancellation, they will have to attest to the information being sent, and then an email will be generated and sent to our system automatically.
Yeah, I believe that I can actually show that. See if I can do that or not. So if I wanted to cancel this policy, hopefully I can. That rejecting. So let me go back. That was probably a little bit fast. So I want to take this policy here. We just make sure there's no units on it. Otherwise, I'm going to probably get into trouble. Perfect. All right. So going back to the policy itself. If I wanted to cancel this policy, for instance, I create the 05 transaction, set my issue date for today, and I'd add my cancellation. And it's going to be effective on 02/11/2016, one day after the policy became effective. Cancellation type code is it's canceled because they're retiring. Transaction sequence number is 01. I mailed it yesterday. I save. I'll save my transaction, hit OK. I want to test validate it. No errors were found, that's great. So if I submit this now, this is this form that I believe was referenced. At that point in time, I would have to sign my name and hit submit. A PDF version of this form will be emailed to the Bureau and filed away, and that serves as the notification.
Just a quick question. When you're doing those cancellations, is there any way that name and short information can just pre-populate?
I think it can. That sort of goes back to the question of making sure that, right, yeah, making sure that the information is truly correct.
Right.
That's a discussion that we can have.
Why don't you hold it until we have.
Okay.
We have one more.
I think there's one more.
One last one from the outside, and then we'll call.
Yep. All right. What if the policy date is different from the USR and the USR is correct? If the policy is updated, how will the unit reflect this?
If the USR is correct, I'm assuming the effective date, is that right? Well, the unit probably would have been rejected because there's no corresponding policy, right? So at that point in time, what would have happened is the policy would need to be created, and then I think a replacement.
No, the question is the unit card got corrected, the policy is correcting, so it's endorsed. The dispatch job at nighttime will pick up that unit card and revalidate it.
In the normal section process.
Yes.
Yeah, So that would be revalidated at night at that point in time. And so what you could do is you could add the unit to my list, see that it's in a rejected state or failed state, and then the next day come back, see that it's in an accepted state.
All right, I think that's the last question we had from the outside. I want to thank everyone, both here and those that participated online. I think it was a really good session. We look forward to rolling it out in a couple of weeks. And thank everyone for their time, and have a great day.
Thank you.